I read the text message 3 times just to ensure I was not hallucinating. 47 people, 4 days, at my beach house. There was no polite question or request for permission. Just a cold command that ended with 3 words. Stock the fridge. In that moment, I realized they were not coming to see me. They were coming to consume the only thing I owned that they actually valued. My name is Ruth Gross, and for the last 15 years, I have made a living by managing chaos. As the operations manager for a private health system here in Florida, my days are defined by logistics, crisis aversion, and the relentless optimization of resources. I am the person who figures out where to put 300 patients when a hurricane is 200 miles offshore. I am the one who calculates the exact burn rate of surgical supplies down to the last penny. I am 38 years old, and I have built a life on the bedrock of competence and control. I do not panic, I execute. But as I stood in the kitchen of my beach house, staring at the screen of my phone, I felt the very specific, cold sensation of my control evaporating. The ocean breeze was drifting in through the patio doors, carrying the scent of salt and jasmine that usually anchored me. But in that moment, the air felt thin, insufficient to fill my lungs. The house itself was my sanctuary. It was a sprawling, light-filled structure sitting on a prime stretch of coastline, the kind of property that people in my tax bracket are not supposed to own unless they have inherited generational wealth. I had not inherited a dime. Every beam, every window, every square foot of white oak flooring had been paid for with my own money. I had worked 80-hour weeks. I had missed birthdays. I had eaten dinner over a laptop for a decade to afford the down payment and the subsequent renovations. I had never asked my parents for a loan. I had never asked my siblings for a bridge. This house was the physical manifestation of my survival and my success. And now, my sister Brinley had claimed it. The message on my screen was not a question. It was a manifesto. She had sent it to me individually first, perhaps to test the waters, or perhaps because she simply assumed that my compliance was a law of nature, as reliable as gravity. Family reunion plan, the text read, decorated with emoji palm trees and champagne glasses. We have locked in the dates. July 4th weekend. 47 people confirmed. We are doing it at your place because it is the only one big enough. Everyone is so excited. Stock the fridge. Stock the fridge. I put my coffee cup down on the granite island, my hand trembling just slightly. It was not the request itself that made my stomach turn. It was the sheer, breathtaking absence of consent. She had not asked if I was free. She had not asked if the house was available or if I had rented it out for the season. She had not asked if I wanted to host nearly 50 people for 4 days. She had simply announced it, treating my home not as my private residence, but as a family timeshare that I had the privilege of paying the mortgage on. I did the mental math instantly. 47 people. That meant air mattresses in the living room. That meant a septic system pushed to its absolute limit. That meant a grocery bill that would easily run into the thousands of dollars. Brinley had not mentioned a budget. She had not mentioned chipping in. Stock the fridge implied that the infrastructure of this event was my responsibility, while the enjoyment of it would be theirs. However, the financial imposition was not what made my blood run cold. It was the next notification that buzzed against my palm. This one was from the family group chat, a digital space I usually kept muted to preserve my sanity. Brinley had forwarded the plan to the entire family, cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole sprawling network. The messages were flooding in now. Can't wait. So generous of Ruth. This is going to be epic. And then, Brinley sent a follow-up message, one that stopped time. Just a thought regarding logistics, Brinley wrote. Since there will be so much noise and chaos with 47 people, and we know how Sage gets, maybe it would be better if she stayed with a respite sitter or did a little camp for the weekend. It might be too much for her to handle, and we want everyone to be able to relax without walking on eggshells. I stared at the name. Sage. My daughter is 10 years old. She is my world. Adoption had been a long, arduous road, one I had walked alone, and Sage was the light at the end of that tunnel. She is brilliant, kind, and deeply observant. She also has sensory processing sensitivities. Loud, unpredictable noises can be physically painful for her. Crowds can be overwhelming. We have built our life around managing this. We have quiet corners. We have noise-canceling headphones. We have exit strategies. But Brinley was not suggesting an exit strategy. She was suggesting an eviction. I read the message again, looking for a shred of empathy, but all I found was selfishness wrapped in the guise of concern. We want everyone to be able to relax. That was the truth of it. Brinley did not care about Sage's comfort. She cared about her own. She did not want to deal with a child who might need the music turned down. She did not want to explain to the cousins why Sage might need a break from the roughhousing. She wanted a prop-perfect family reunion, and my daughter, my non-biological, sensitive, beautiful daughter, was an inconvenience to her aesthetic. The implication was clear. We want your house, Ruth. We just do not want your child. A familiar, bitter taste rose in my throat. This was not new. For years, I had made excuses for them. I told myself they just did not understand adoption. I told myself they were just loud people who did not know how to be gentle. When they forgot Sage's birthday, I told myself they were busy. When they made comments about her real parents, I told myself they were just ignorant, not malicious. But this was premeditated. Brinley had calculated the guest list. She had calculated the dates, and she had calculated that the presence of my daughter would be a buzzkill for the party she was throwing at my expense. I looked out the window at the dunes. Sage was down there, sitting in the sand, collecting drift shells with that intense, beautiful focus she had. She looked so small against the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean. She loved this house. This was her safe place. It was the one place in the world where she did not have to mask, where she did not have to apologize for existing. And Brinley wanted to kick her out of her own sanctuary so that 47 people could drink margaritas and trample the landscaping. I felt a shift inside me. It was not an explosion. It was something quieter, colder, and far more permanent. In my line of work, you learn that the most dangerous problems are not the ones that make a lot of noise. They are the structural failures that happen silently before the whole building comes down. My love for my family had been a structural load-bearing wall in my life. I had propped them up. I had bailed them out. I had hosted the dinners and bought the gifts and swallowed the insults, because I thought that was the price of belonging. But looking at that text message, reading those words about my daughter, I heard the snap of the final beam giving way. They did not see me as a sister or a daughter. They saw me as a resource. I was a logistics manager to them, nothing more. I was a wallet. I was a venue. And Sage? Sage was just a defect in the venue that needed to be managed. I did not reply to the group chat. I did not type out the furious paragraph that was burning in my brain. I did not call Brinley to scream. Screaming implies that you are asking to be heard, that you still hope for a resolution. I had no hope left. Instead, I took a screenshot of Brinley's initial demand. Then I took a screenshot of the group chat message about Sage. I scrolled back and found the messages from 3 months ago where Brinley asked for money for her car repair, that I later saw her spending on a designer handbag. Screenshot. I found the messages where my mother made passive-aggressive comments about Sage's hair. Screenshot. I moved with the precise, methodical energy of an operations manager preparing for a hostile audit. I created a new folder on my secure cloud drive. I named it The Reunion. If they wanted a reunion, they would get one. If Brinley wanted to play games with logistics and access, she had picked the wrong opponent. She was playing checkers. I had been playing three-dimensional chess with hospital administrators and insurance adjusters for 15 years. I looked at the phone one last time. "Stock the fridge," she had said. "Okay," I whispered to the empty kitchen room. "I will prepare everything exactly as you deserve." I set the phone down, face down. The decision was made. I was not going to stop them from coming. I was not going to argue. I was going to let them walk right into the trap they had built for themselves. Brick by entitled brick. The old Ruth, the one who just wanted to be loved, was gone. The woman who stood in the kitchen now was strictly management, and I was about to close the account. To understand why I felt the urge to burn the bridge with my family, you have to understand the architecture of the bridge itself. It was built entirely on my dime, and the toll was my self-respect. For years, I told myself that generosity was the price of admission to this family. I was the one who made it out. I was the one with the executive title and the stock options, while my parents lived on a fixed income that never seemed to cover their impulses. And Brinley bounced between multi-level marketing schemes and boyfriends who borrowed her car and never filled the tank. I had convinced myself that being the safety net was a noble role. I remembered the time my father needed emergency dental work. It was $4,000. I wired the money within an hour of his call. He never said thank you. He just made a joke at the next family dinner about how I must be charging patients extra to afford my lifestyle. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. Because that is what you do when you are desperate to be in on the joke, even when the joke is at your expense. Then there was the time Brinley needed first and last month's rent for an apartment because her roommate had bailed. $2,500. She promised to pay me back when her tax refund came. That was 6 years ago. Instead of a repayment check, I got photos of her on a cruise to Cabo San Lucas 3 weeks after I sent the money. When I gently asked about it, she told me I was being petty and that family should not count coins. They trained me well. They trained me to believe that my resources were communal property, but my boundaries were selfish inconveniences. The beach house was the ultimate symbol of this entitlement. From the moment I signed the deed, they stopped seeing it as my home and started viewing it as the family timeshare. They did not see the mortgage payments I made every month. They did not see the property taxes or the insurance premiums that skyrocketed every hurricane season. They only saw a free venue. I recalled the summer of 2021. I had planned a quiet weekend alone to recover from a brutal quarter at the hospital. I arrived on a Friday evening, exhausted, only to find my parents' sedan already in the driveway. Brinley was there, too, with a new boyfriend and her 2 rowdy golden retrievers. They had used the spare key I gave my mother for emergencies only. When I walked in, the living room was a disaster zone of beer coolers and wet towels on my hardwood floors. Brinley looked up from the sofa, not with an apology, but with a request. She asked if we had any more limes because they wanted to make margaritas. I spent that weekend cleaning up after them, cooking 3 meals a day for 5 adults, and sleeping on the pull-out couch because my parents had taken the master bedroom. They said the mattress was better for my father's back. I let them have it. I always let them have it. But the money and the invasion of privacy were things I could tolerate. I could absorb the financial hit. I could hire cleaners. What I could not absorb, what had been slowly killing me for the last 4 years, was how they treated Sage. Sage came to me with a history of trauma that predated her memory, but lived in her nervous system. She experiences the world at a higher volume than the rest of us. The sound of a balloon popping can ruin her day. Chaotic, unstructured noise makes her shut down. It is not something she chooses. It is how she is wired. My family views this wiring as a character flaw. I remember Sage's 8th birthday. I had invited the family over, foolishly hoping that for once, they would center their attention on her. I had asked them specifically to keep things low-key. No fireworks, no loud music, just a nice dinner and cake. Brinley arrived with her 3 sons, my nephews, who are loud, boisterous boys. Within 10 minutes, they were screaming and chasing each other through the house. When Sage covered her ears and retreated to her room, Brinley rolled her eyes. "She is so dramatic," Brinley had said, "loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen. You baby her too much. Ruth, she needs to toughen up. The real world isn't quiet." My mother chimed in, swirling her wine. "It is just a phase. She uses it to get attention. If she were my child, we would not tolerate that sulking." I went to Sage's room and found her hiding in her closet, wrapped in her weighted blanket, silently crying. I sat with her for an hour, missing her own birthday cake cutting because I could not bear to bring her back out to the wolves. When I finally emerged, the cake was half eaten. They hadn't waited for the birthday girl. "We thought she was done for the night," my father said, wiping frosting from his lip. Did not want the ice cream to melt. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering why I kept inviting them back. I told myself it was for Sage. I told myself she needed to know her cousins and her grandparents. I told myself that cutting off family was a sin, that blood was thicker than water. But looking back, I realized that blood was not thicker than water. Blood was just a stain that was harder to get out. The exclusion became more blatant as Sage got older. Last Thanksgiving, Brinley organized a game of touch football on the beach. All the kids were playing. Brinley was picking teams. I watched from the deck as she called out names. She picked her sons. She picked the neighbors' kids who had wandered over. Sage was standing right there, wearing her little jersey, holding the ball, waiting to be picked. Brinley looked right at her and then turned to the group. "Okay, that is everyone. Let's play." Sage stood frozen for a moment, the ball dropping from her hands, before she turned and walked back toward the dunes, pretending to look for shells so no one would see her face crumble. I stormed down the stairs. "Brinley, you forgot Sage." Brinley did not even look up from the field. "Oh, honey, it is too rough for her. You know how she gets when people bump into her. We did not want her to have a meltdown and ruin the game for the other kids. We are doing her a favor." Doing her a favor. That was their narrative. They were always doing us a favor by excluding us. They were protecting themselves from the inconvenience of my daughter's humanity. To them, Sage was not a person to be loved. She was a variable to be managed, a defect in the perfect family portrait they were trying to paint. I looked at the photos Brinley posted on social media later that week. The caption read, "Family is everything," in the group photo. Sage was barely visible, standing on the far edge of the frame, half cropped out. I had spent years trying to bridge the gap. I had bought my nephews expensive gaming consoles, hoping they would like Sage more. I had paid for family vacations, hoping that in a relaxed setting, they would bond. I had swallowed every snide comment about Sage's real parents and her genetic baggage. I thought I was being a peacemaker. I realize now that I was actually an accomplice. By allowing them to treat my daughter like a second-class citizen in her own home, I was teaching Sage that this was what she deserved. I was teaching her that family love is conditional, that she has to change who she is to be accepted, and that her mother will stand by and watch while she is erased. The guilt hit me harder than the anger. I had failed her. In my desperate need to keep my family of origin happy, I had sacrificed the well-being of the family I had chosen. So when I received that text message about the 47 people, followed by the suggestion to send Sage away to a respite sitter, it was not just an insult. It was a moment of absolute clarity. Brinley was not just asking for my house. She was asking me to remove the problem so they could enjoy my assets without the burden of my reality. She wanted the luxury I had built, but she wanted to strip mine it of the very person I built it for. They wanted the ocean view, the high thread count sheets, and the fully stocked wine fridge, but they did not want the little girl who walked softly on the floorboards and needed the volume turned down. I looked at the text again. It might be too much for her to handle. "No, Brinley, you are the one who is not going to be able to handle what comes next." For 38 years, I had been the doormat. I had been the bank. I had been the fixer. But as I sat there, remembering the image of Sage dropping that football in the sand, I knew that the bank was closed. The fixer had quit. I was done paying for their love. I was done apologizing for my daughter. And I was certainly done letting them think that this house, this sanctuary, belonged to anyone other than the two people whose names were on the deed and in the will. The silence in the room felt different now. It was not the silence of submission. It was the silence of a predator waiting in the tall grass. I was not going to yell. I was not going to cry. I was going to do exactly what they asked. I was going to give them a reunion they would never forget. I swiped out of the photo gallery and opened my banking app. It was time to audit the accounts. And this time, the balance was going to be zero. I decided to make the call from my home office. I needed the physical barrier of my desk. the heavy mahogany surface that I usually sat behind when negotiating vendor contracts or firing incompetent staff. I needed to feel like a CEO, not a daughter. I placed my phone on the desk, put it on speaker, and hit the dial button for my mother's landline. She picked up on the second ring. The background noise was immediate. The clatter of dishes, the hum of a television, and the distinct, shrill voice of Brinley laughing at something. They were together. Of course they were together. They were probably already planning the menu for the party they were throwing at my expense. "Ruthie," my mother chirped. Her voice had that sugary, oblivious quality that she always adopted when she knew she had stepped over a line, but had decided to pretend the line did not exist. "We were just talking about you. Brinley found the cutest matching swimsuits for the grandkids for the reunion. We were wondering if you had any extra coolers in the garage, or if we need to bring some." I did not return the greeting. I did not ask about the swimsuits. I kept my voice flat, stripped of any emotion that they could latch onto and use against me. "Mom, why did I find out about a 47-person reunion at my own house through a text message?" I asked. "Why didn't anyone call me? Why didn't anyone ask if the house was available?" There was a pause on the other end, but it was not a pause of guilt. It was the pause of someone annoyed that they have to explain the obvious to a slow child. "Oh, Ruth, honestly," my mother sighed, the sugar dissolving instantly. "Why do we need to ask? We are family. Family does not need to make appointments to see each other. It is your house, yes, but it is the family gathering place. You know how much your father loves the deck. We just assumed you would be happy to host. You are always so capable." Capable, that was their code word for exploitable. "It is not about being capable, Mom," I said, leaning forward in my chair. "It is about respect. You invited nearly 50 people to stay on my property for 4 days without a single conversation with me, and then Brinley texts me to say I should send Sage away? You want to kick my daughter out of her own home?" "Now, do not start with the drama," my mother said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, even though I knew Brinley was right there. "Nobody is kicking anyone out. We are just thinking about what is best for everyone. You know how Sage is. She is just sensitive. She gets overwhelmed so easily. Last Christmas, she spent the whole time in her room reading because the music was too loud. It makes people uncomfortable. Ruth, it makes people feel like they cannot have fun." "She was reading because her cousins were screaming at the top of their lungs," I countered. "She has sensory processing issues. She is not trying to ruin your fun. She is trying to survive in an environment that you refuse to make safe for her." "See? This is exactly what I mean," my mother said, her tone hardening. "You get so defensive. We just want a nice, normal weekend. We want the kids to run around and scream and play without you shushing them every 5 minutes because Sage has a headache. It is a party. Ruth, parties are loud. If Sage cannot handle that, then maybe she would be happier somewhere else. It is a kindness, really." I felt the blood pulsing in my temples. They had twisted exclusion until it looked like mercy. They were gaslighting me into believing that banning my child was an act of love. Before I could respond, I heard the phone fumble on the other end, and then Brinley's voice blasted through the speaker, loud and sharp. "Look, Ruth, let us be real for a second," Brinley said. She did not bother with pleasantries. "This reunion is for the cousins to bond, the real cousins, the ones who grew up together, the ones who share, a history." The air in my office seemed to vanish. I stared at the phone, unable to believe she had actually said it out loud. "The real cousins?" I repeated, my voice deadly quiet. "Are you implying that Sage is not a real cousin?" "I am just saying it is different," Brinley said, breezing past the cruelty of her words as if she were discussing the weather. "Sage is great, sure, but she is not. She does not fit in. She is not like the boys. She is not like my kids. She is adopted. Ruth, it is a different dynamic. The other kids, they have this bond because they are blood. Sage is always just sort of there, watching. It brings the mood down. We just want a weekend where we do not have to walk on eggshells around your little charity case. Charity case. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear my own heart hammering against my ribs. It was a violent, physical thudding. In that split second, 20 years of sisterhood, of shared holidays, of secrets, of financial bailouts, it all incinerated. She had not just insulted me, she had denied my daughter's existence as a member of this family. "You are talking about my daughter," I said. My voice did not shake. It was terrifyingly steady. "You are talking about your niece." "I am talking about reality," Brinley snapped. "Stop being so sensitive. You are always playing the victim. We are bringing 47 people to Florida. Do you have any idea how much planning that takes? I do not have time to worry about whether Sage is crying because a firecracker went off. I need you to focus on the logistics. We need the fridge stocked. We need the pool heater turned on. And we need you to figure out a place for Sage to go so the rest of us can actually enjoy the beach house you are always bragging about." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment where the old Ruth would have folded. The old Ruth would have cried. The old Ruth would have argued for an hour and then eventually capitulated, sending Sage to a friend's house just to keep the peace, just to avoid being the bad guy. But the old Ruth died the moment Brinley said charity case. I shifted gears. I stopped being the hurt sister and became the operations manager. If they wanted to talk logistics, we would talk logistics. "Let us talk about the house then," I said coolly. "Since you planned this without me, you probably do not know that the septic system is rated for a maximum of 12 people per day. 47 people will cause a catastrophic sewage failure within 24 hours. Did you plan for that? Did you plan for the fact that my homeowner's insurance policy strictly forbids gatherings of over 20 people without a special event rider? If one of your drunken friends slips by the pool, I lose the house. Did you think about that?" Brinley laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "Oh my God. Here she goes. The fun police. You are so uptight. Ruth, it is a house, not a hospital. Nothing is going to break. You are just making up rules because you are bitter that we planned a party and you feel left out. You are jealous because we are all close and you are just... you." "I am raising valid safety concerns," I said. "You are being selfish." Brinley cut me off. "That is what you are, selfish. You have this giant house, all this money, all this space, and you cannot stand to share it for one weekend. You cannot stand that we are happy. You want to ruin it for the kids because you are miserable. Well, guess what? We are coming anyway. Mom and Dad already booked their flights. The cousins have requested time off work. You are not going to cancel this. Ruth, you do not have the guts to look Mom in the eye and tell her she cannot see her family. So just stop fighting, stock the fridge, and get Sage out of the way. Do not embarrass us." "Do not embarrass us," my mother added in the background, faint but audible. "Just be a good sister for once. Ruth, be a good sister." That phrase had been the leash around my neck for my entire life. Be a good sister meant give Brinley money. Be a good sister meant let Brinley take the credit. Be a good sister meant let them walk all over me and say thank you for the footprints. "I understand," I said, and I did. I understood everything perfectly. "I hear you loud and clear. You want the house ready. You want the fridge stocked. You want no interruptions." "Exactly," Brinley said, her tone triumphant. She thought she had won. She thought she had bullied me into submission one more time. "See? Was that so hard? We will be there on the 3rd. Make sure the gate code is the same." "I will take care of everything," I said. "Good," Brinley said. "And Ruth? Don't buy the cheap wine this time." The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my office, listening to the hum of the air conditioner. My hands were perfectly still on the polished wood of my desk. A strange calmness had settled over me. It was the calmness of a surgeon who has identified the tumor and knows exactly where to cut. They thought I was defeated. They thought I was scrambling to order groceries and hide my daughter away. They had no idea that they had just handed me the keys to their own destruction. Brinley was right about one thing. I was capable. I was very, very capable. I opened my laptop. The first thing I did was pull up the website for the property management company that handled my security system. I logged in. User, R. Gross. Password, hidden. I navigated to the Access Control tab. There it was, Master Gate Code. The code my family had been using for 5 years. The code they had probably given out to all 47 people on that guest list. I clicked Edit. I typed in a new sequence of numbers. Then I went to the authorized users list. I saw my mother's name. I saw Brinley's name. I saw my father's name. One by one, I clicked Delete. "Are you sure you want to remove this user?" the system asked me. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life," I said to the screen. I clicked Confirm. The digital list vanished. Next, I opened my email and found the contact for the private security firm I used for the hospital's VIP wing. I began typing a new message. Subject: Security Detail Request. Private Residence, July 4th and weekend. Body: I need a team of 2 uniformed officers for a 72-hour shift at my property. Strict access control, no unauthorized entry. There will likely be a large group attempting to gain access. They will be aggressive. I need them turned away. I hit send. They wanted a reunion? They were going to get one. They were going to be reunited with the consequences of their own entitlement. They called me selfish. They called my daughter a charity case. They said family doesn't need to ask. Well, they were about to learn that family is not a legal defense for trespassing. And Ruth Gross? She was done being a sister. She was now the landlord. And the eviction notice was already in the mail. The group chat on my phone was vibrating across the mahogany surface of my desk like a trapped insect. It buzzed every 30 seconds. Ping, ping, ping. They were discussing menu options. They were debating whether to order a keg or just cases of beer. They were arguing over who got the master bedroom. My bedroom. I did not pick up the phone. I did not type a sarcastic retort. I did not leave the group. To the casual observer, my silence would look like compliance. It would look like I was busy stocking the fridge as ordered. But I was not stocking the fridge. I was fortifying the castle. I opened a fresh browser window on my laptop. The first tab I pulled up was the portal for the gated community where my beach house sat. It was a high-end development, the kind that prided itself on exclusivity and security. We paid exorbitant homeowner association fees for 24-hour patrols in a gatehouse that was staffed by actual humans, not just a keypad. I navigated to the guest authorization section. Currently, there was a standing instruction on my file. Allow immediate access for Brinley Thomas, Vernon Gross, and Darlene Gross. I clicked the edit button. My cursor hovered over my sister's name. I did not feel a pang of guilt. I did not feel a wave of nostalgia. I felt the cool, sterile satisfaction of correcting a data error. I deleted Brinley. I deleted my father. I deleted my mother. Then, I went to the special instructions text box. I typed slowly and deliberately. Effective immediately. No individuals are to be admitted to the property at 4402 Ocean Drive unless they are physically accompanied by the homeowner. Ruth Gross. This includes family members. There are no exceptions. If anyone attempts to bypass security claiming to be my guest, please deny entry and contact me immediately. I hit Save. The screen flashed green. Update successful. Step 1 was complete. Now for the house itself. I minimized the HOA tab and opened my smart home dashboard. This system was my pride and joy when I installed it. It allowed me to control the thermostat, the lights, and most importantly, the locks, from anywhere in the world. I pulled up the user log for the front door smart lock. There were 5 active codes. Code 1 was mine. Code 2 was the cleaner's. Code 3 was titled Family. That code had been the same for 4 years. It was my parents' anniversary date. Every aunt, uncle, and cousin knew it. They passed it around like a Netflix password. I selected the family code. I hit Revoke. Then, just to be absolutely certain, I generated a completely new master code for myself. I also disabled the feature that allowed the garage door to be opened with the old universal keypad code. From this moment on, the only way into that house was through a digital sequence that existed only in my head. I watched the status indicators on the screen turn from open to locked secure. The house was now a vault. But a vault is only as secure as the keys you have already handed out. I remembered the physical key fobs. 2 years ago, I had given a set of emergency fobs to my parents. They were programmed to bypass the electronic deadbolt in case of a power outage or a Wi-Fi failure. If they brought those fobs, they could still get in. I navigated to the Hardware Config tab. I located the serial numbers for the 2 spare fobs. Status: active. I clicked the drop-down menu. Deactivate. Warning: this action cannot be undone remotely. The fobs will need to be physically reprogrammed at the base station to work again. Good, I said aloud. I clicked confirm. The house was sealed, but I was just getting started. This was not just about denying them entry, it was about protecting my assets, and in my family. Assets was a fluid term. I logged into my American Express account. I had added my mother as a supplementary card holder 5 years ago. It was supposed to be for emergencies only. A flat tire, a sudden medical copay, a flight change. I had not checked the statement in 2 weeks because I had been so busy with the hospital merger. I clicked on pending transactions. My breath hitched in my throat. The list was a mile long. Costco wholesale, $540. Total Wine and More, $822. Party City, $315. Custom ink t-shirts, $450. I stared at the screen. The dates were from yesterday and today. They were not just kicking me out of my house, they were making me pay for the party. They were buying alcohol, decorations, and custom t-shirts for a reunion that expressly excluded my daughter, and they were charging it all to my credit card. The audacity was breathtaking. It was almost impressive in its total lack of moral compass. They assumed I would not check, or worse, they assumed I would check, see the charges, and be too afraid of conflict to say anything. They banked on my silence. They banked on the fact that I had always absorbed the cost of being a gross. I picked up my cell phone and dialed the number on the back of my card. American Express Platinum Desk. This is Sarah. How can I help you? Ms. Gross? Hi, Sarah, I said, my voice crisp and professional. I have identified several fraudulent transactions on the supplementary card ending in 4402. I need to dispute these charges immediately. I am so sorry to hear that, Sarah said. Let me pull up the account. Which charges are we looking at? Everything from the last 48 hours, I said. And Sarah, I need you to freeze that supplementary card. Right now, I want it completely blocked from any further use. Consider it done, she said. The card is now inactive. Any recurring charges will be declined. Any attempt to swipe it will result in a do not honor message. Thank you, I said. And please issue a fraud alert. If anyone calls to try and reactivate it, I want to be notified personally. I hung up. I imagined the scene at the next store they went to. I imagined my mother standing at the checkout counter, a cart full of expensive steaks or more decorations, handing over the heavy metal card with that smug sense of entitlement, only to have the cashier hand it back. Declined. It was petty, it was vindictive, and it felt like taking a deep breath of pure oxygen after holding my breath for a decade. There was one final layer of security I needed to arrange. The digital locks and the gate codes were good, but Brinley was tenacious. She was the kind of person who would climb over a fence or scream until a neighbor let her in. I could not rely on passive defenses. I needed active enforcement. I found the number for a private security firm I had used previously for a high-risk termination at the hospital. They were expensive, discreet, and intimidatingly professional. "This is Archer Security," a deep voice answered. "This is Ruth Gross," I said. "I have a job for the 4th of July weekend. Residential property. I need a 24-hour detail. 2 guards. Visible presence." "What is the threat level?" the voice asked. "Low physical threat, high nuisance level," I explained. It is a family dispute. Large group attempting unauthorized access. They will claim they have a right to be there. They will scream. They might try to force a door. I need them stopped at the perimeter. We can handle that, he said. Do you want them removed if they make it onto the grounds? I want them stopped at the driveway, I corrected. I do not want them stepping foot on the porch. I want a hard perimeter, and I want you to have a list of authorized persons. Send us the list, he said. I opened a blank document. I typed 2 names. 1. Ruth Gross. 2. Sage Gross. I saved the file as access/list final PDF and attached it to the email. Sent, I said. Anyone not on that list is a trespasser. If they refuse to leave, call the police. Understood. Ms. Gross, we will have a team there starting at 0600 hours on Friday. I leaned back in my chair. The trap was set. I spent the next hour meticulously documenting everything. I took screenshots of the pending charges on the Amex. I saved the chat logs where Brinley talked about the guest list. I downloaded the confirmation of the lock changes and the security contract. I created a digital paper trail that proved premeditation on their part and defensive measures on mine. If they tried to sue me, which Brinley was litigious enough to try, I would have a mountain of evidence showing that they had planned an unauthorized event and engaged in credit card fraud to fund it. I looked at the time. It was 7 in the evening. My phone buzzed again. It was a direct text from Brinley. Hey, just checking. Did you get the extra heavy-duty trash bags? We are going to make a lot of trash. I stared at the message. We are going to make a lot of trash.
You have no idea, Brinley.
I did not reply. I simply placed the phone face down. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the Florida scrub. It was beautiful and quiet. Sage walked into the room, holding her sketchbook. She looked at me with those big, perceptive eyes. Mom, she asked softly, are we going to the beach house? I knelt down so I was eye level with her. I smoothed her hair back. Yes, baby, I said. We are going to the beach house. Are the cousins going to be there? She asked, a flicker of anxiety in her voice. She braced herself, ready to hear that she would have to hide in her room, ready to hear that she would have to be invisible. No, I said firmly. The cousins are not going to be there. Just you and me, and the ocean. It is going to be very, very quiet. She smiled, a genuine, relieved smile that broke my heart and healed it all at once. Good, she whispered. Yes, I agreed. Good. I had one more day of work before the holiday weekend. One more day to let them drive south. Cars loaded with luggage. Coolers empty waiting to be filled. Expectations high. One more day to let them drive 300 miles toward a door that would not open. I went to the kitchen and made myself a tea. I felt light. I felt clean. For the first time in 38 years, I was not wondering if I was doing enough to please them. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was stocking the fridge, but only for 2. It was exactly 2:15 in the afternoon when the invasion began. I was sitting at the kitchen island, a cup of herbal tea steaming in front of me, with my iPad propped up against the fruit bowl. The screen displayed a live feed from the high-definition security camera mounted on the stone pillar of the subdivision's main gate. It looked like a military convoy, or perhaps a traveling circus that had taken a wrong turn. First came Brinley's white Range Rover, a vehicle she could barely afford the lease payments on. Behind her was my parents' sedan. Then came a cavalcade of minivans, rental cars, and pickup trucks loaded down with coolers, beach chairs, and inflatable pool floats. I counted 12 vehicles in total, snaking down the main road, blocking the entrance for the residents who actually paid the homeowner association fees. My phone, which had been sitting silently face down, suddenly lit up. It vibrated against the granite countertop. Incoming call, Brinley. I let it ring. On the screen, I watched the driver's side door of the Range Rover fly open. Brinley stepped out. She was wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat and a flowing sundress, the perfect outfit for the hostess of a party she was not paying for. She marched up to the keypad, punched in the code, and waited. Nothing happened. She punched it in again, harder this time, as if force could override digital programming. The heavy iron gates remained immovable. My phone stopped ringing, then started again immediately. Incoming call, Brinley. I took a sip of tea. The mint was soothing. The adrenaline spiking in my blood was not. On the screen, Brinley was now waving her arms. She turned back to the line of cars and shrugged, offering a silly technology gesture to the 47 people baking in the Florida heat. She walked over to the guard booth. I had paid extra for the private security detail to be stationed right there, alongside the regular gate staff. I saw a tall man in a dark uniform step out. This was not the usual elderly gatekeeper who waved everyone through. This was an operative from Archer Security, a man who looked like he ate concrete for breakfast. I turned up the volume on the iPad. The camera had a microphone, but the distance made the audio tinny. Still, Brinley's shrill voice cut through the static. "I am the sister of the homeowner," she was saying, pointing a manicured finger at the gate. "The code is not working. Just open it. We have a lot of ice cream melting in these cars." The guard said something I could not hear, but his body language was a brick wall. He shook his head. He held up a clipboard. Brinley stepped back, her posture shifting from annoyance to genuine confusion. She pulled out her phone. My phone vibrated again. Incoming call, Brinley. I watched her face contort with rage as the call went to voicemail. She turned to my parents' car. My father, Vernon, hauled himself out of the passenger seat. He looked red-faced. Likely from a combination of the heat and the pre-mixed cocktails, I suspected they had started drinking on the drive down. He stormed up to the guard. I could see him pointing at his chest, doing the "do you know who I am" routine. He was probably telling the guard that he was the patriarch, that he owned this family, and by extension, he owned everything I had built. The guard did not flinch. He simply tapped the clipboard again. Behind them, a horn honked, then another. The line of cars was getting restless. Someone from a minivan 3 cars back leaned out the window and shouted, "What is the holdup?" It was chaos. It was humiliating. And it was entirely of their own making. My phone rang for the 5th time. This time, I picked it up. "Hello?" I said, my voice calm, casual, as if I were answering a telemarketer. "Ruth!" Brinley screamed. The sound was so loud, I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "Pick up your damn phone! The gate is broken. We are stuck outside, and this idiot guard will not let us in. He says we are not on the list. Tell him to open the gate right now. The traffic is backing up to the highway." "The gate is not broken, Brinley," I said. There was a pause. On the screen, I saw Brinley freeze. She held the phone tighter to her ear. "What?" "The gate is working perfectly," I said, "and the guard is doing exactly what I paid him to do. You are not on the list because you are not invited." "Is this a joke?" Brinley's voice cracked. It was a high, hysterical sound. "We have 47 people here. We drove 5 hours. We have Grandma in the back seat. Open the gate. Ruth, this is not funny." "It is not a joke," I replied. I told you I would handle the logistics. This is the logistics. The house is closed. The reunion is canceled. Turn around." "You cannot do this," she shrieked. "Mom, Dad, Ruth is insane." I saw my mother scramble out of the car, looking frantic. She grabbed the phone from Brinley. "Ruthie?" My mother's voice was trembling, oscillating between tears and manipulation. "Ruthie, baby, what is happening? People are staring. The neighbors are looking. You are embarrassing us. Please, just open the gate. We can talk about whatever is bothering you once we are inside and have a drink." "There is nothing to talk about, Mom," I said. "You wanted a reunion without me. Now you have one. You can have it in the parking lot of a Denny's on the way home." "How can you be so cruel?" she sobbed. "We are your family. We did everything for you. We raised you." "You raised me to be a bank account," I cut in. "You raised me to be a doormat, and you raised me to believe that my daughter does not matter." "Oh, for God's sake." My father had snatched the phone now. His voice was a boom of thunder. "Listen to me. young lady. You open this gate right now, or so help me God. I am your father. I demand some respect. You do not treat people like this. We spent thousands of dollars on this weekend. Actually, you spent thousands of dollars of my money, I corrected him. I saw the Amex charges. Dad, the card is canceled. The fraud report is filed. You might want to worry about that before you worry about the gate. I saw him stagger back slightly on the video feed, the color draining from his face. He knew. He knew I had caught them. Brinley grabbed the phone back. She was not crying. She was vibrating with pure, venomous fury. She walked right up to the camera lens, so her face filled my iPad screen, distorted and ugly. You are a bitch, Ruth, she spat. You are a jealous, lonely bitch. You know why we didn't want you here? Because you ruin everything. You are depressing, and we didn't want to spend 4 days tiptoeing around your little retard daughter. The word hung in the air. Silence descended on my kitchen. The ocean breeze outside stopped. The world narrowed down to that single, hateful slur. She had said it. She had finally said the quiet part out loud. She didn't call Sage sensitive. She didn't call her challenging. She used a word designed to dehumanize, to hurt, to erase. A cold, diamond-hard clarity settled in my chest. If I had felt any lingering doubt, any shred of guilt about turning my family away, it evaporated instantly. Thank you, I said. My voice was frighteningly soft. What? Brinley breathed, caught off guard by my reaction. Thank you for confirming exactly who you are, I said. I want you to listen to me very carefully. Brinley, because this is the last time I'm going to speak to you for a very long time. You wanted a weekend where you didn't have to deal with my daughter? You got it. You are never going to have to deal with her again. She is my daughter. She is the owner of this house in trust. And you? You are a trespasser. I looked at the video feed. The guard, Officer Miller, had heard enough. He stepped forward, his hand resting casually but meaningfully on his belt. Ma'am, I heard him say through the feed, his voice booming. The homeowner has denied entry. You are blocking a private thoroughfare. You have 5 minutes to turn this convoy around before I call the county sheriff to issue citations for trespassing and disturbing the peace. You can't, Brinley started. I can, Miller said. And I will. Move the vehicles. Now. On the phone, I delivered my final blow. Stock the fridge, Brinley, I said, at your own house. I hung up. I watched the screen. For a moment, nobody moved. It was a tableau of defeat. My mother was weeping into her hands, leaning against the hood of the car. My father looked old and shrunken, staring at his shoes. Brinley stood alone, phone in hand, looking at the closed gate with a mixture of shock and hatred. Then, slowly, the reality set in. The honking from the cars behind them became continuous. The cousins, the aunts, the friends, they were all getting out of their cars, asking what was happening, why they weren't going in. I watched Brinley have to explain. I watched her have to walk down the line of cars, gesturing wildly, pointing at the gate, trying to spin a story where she was the victim. But I saw the faces of the others. I saw the annoyance. I saw the confusion. They had driven hundreds of miles for a party that did not exist. Slowly, painfully, the convoy began to dismantle. Brinley got back into her Range Rover. She had to perform a 3-point turn in the narrow entrance, nearly backing into a palm tree. My parents followed, then the minivans, then the trucks. It took 20 minutes for them to clear the driveway. I sat there and watched every second of it. I watched the taillights of 47 people fade down the coastal highway, heading north, back to where they came from. The silence that followed was profound. The gate stood closed, majestic and unyielding. The guard returned to his booth, making a note in his logbook. I let out a breath I didn't know I had been holding. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the massive release of tension. I had done it. I had stood up to the monolith of my family and I had won. But as I closed the iPad cover, I knew this was not the end. Brinley was not the type to retreat quietly. She had been humiliated in front of everyone she tried to impress. She had been caught stealing. She had been exposed. She would strike back. She would try to hurt me the only way she knew how, by attacking my character, my reputation, and my legal standing. I stood up and walked to the sliding glass doors. Sage was out on the deck, wearing her noise-canceling headphones, reading a book about marine biology. She looked up and saw me. She gave me a small wave. I waved back. Let them come for me, I thought. Let them write their nasty Facebook posts. Let them try to forge their deeds. I was ready. I turned away from the window and walked to my home office. I had a file to organize. The war had officially begun, and I needed to make sure my arsenal was fully stocked. The silence of the beach house was a luxury I had purchased with a lifetime of compliance, but the digital world was loud, screaming, and tearing itself apart. I had turned off my phone notifications, but curiosity is a dangerous reflex. Around 8 in the evening, after Sage had gone to bed with her noise-canceling headphones and a new Lego set, I made the mistake of opening Facebook. The timeline was a battlefield. Brinley had not wasted a single second. She had posted a photograph of herself, looking teary-eyed and tragic, sitting in what looked like a hotel lobby. The caption was a masterclass in weaponized victimhood. Please pray for my sister. Ruth. It began. We drove 5 hours to see her, to bring the family together, only to be turned away at the gate like criminals. I am heartbroken to say that I think she is having a breakdown. She has cut us all off. She is paranoid, aggressive, and completely unrecognizable. We are worried she has been brainwashed or is under the influence of something bad. We just wanted to love her. We just wanted to see our niece, but she has chosen darkness. We are staying at a motel tonight because we have nowhere else to go. Please send prayers for our family in this difficult time. I stared at the screen, my mouth tasting like copper. Brainwashed, under the influence, breakdown. She was painting a narrative where my boundaries were symptoms of insanity. She was building a case for my incompetence. The comments were pouring in like sewage. Oh my God. Brinley, I am so sorry. That is horrifying, wrote a woman I had known since high school. Ruth was always a little odd, but this is next level. Is she dangerous? Wrote my mother's bridge partner. If you need a place to stay, let us know. How could a daughter do that to her parents? Then came the messages to my personal inbox. People I hadn't spoken to in 10 years were sliding into my DMs, asking if I was okay with that cloying, morbid curiosity that masks judgment as concern. Ruth, honey, we saw Brinley's post. Do you need help? Are you on medication? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to scream. I wanted to post the screenshots of the Amex fraud. I wanted to post the text where she called my daughter a retard. I wanted to burn it all down with the truth. But I stopped. That was what Brinley wanted. She wanted a public catfight. She wanted me to look unhinged, defensive, and messy. If I engaged, I validated her narrative that I was unstable. I closed the Facebook tab. I would not give her the oxygen. I opened my email instead, intending to clear out my work inbox before the holiday weekend truly began. I deleted 3 promotional emails from clothing stores. I archived a newsletter from the hospital board. Then I saw it. It was an email from a service called Notary Now, a mobile notary dispatch service. The subject line read, Confirmation of appointment. Property transfer documents. July 5th. I froze. I had not hired a notary. I was not buying or selling any property. My hand shook as I clicked open the email. Dear Ms. Gross, this email confirms your appointment for a mobile notary to visit 4402 Ocean Drive on Saturday, July 5th, at 2 in the afternoon. The notary, Mr. Henderson, will be prepared to witness signatures for the quit-claim deed and tenancy in common agreement as requested by the filing party. Please ensure all parties, including yourself and Mr. Vernon Gross, have valid government identification ready. I read it twice, then a third time. July 5th, that was tomorrow. That was the Saturday of the reunion. They hadn't just come to party. They hadn't just come to drink my wine and trash my house. They had scheduled a notary to come to my house in the middle of the chaos. The plan unspooled in my mind with terrifying clarity. They would have gotten inside. They would have gotten me drinking. Or perhaps they would have just cornered me. They would have waited until I was overwhelmed, tired, or bullied into submission. And then, ding dong, the notary arrives. "Oh, Ruthie, just sign this little paper," my father would have said. "It just puts my name on the deed for tax purposes. It helps the family trust. Don't be difficult." Or worse, maybe they didn't intend for me to sign it at all. Maybe Brinley, who looks enough like me if the lighting is dim and she wears her hair up, was planning to sign it herself. I clicked on the View Documents link at the bottom of the email. It required a password. I tried my usual password. Incorrect. I tried my birthday. Incorrect. Then I typed in Brinley 1. The document opened. It was a quitclaim deed. It transferred 50% ownership of my beach house, my sanctuary, my investment, my daughter's future inheritance, to Vernon and Darlene Gross for the sum of $10. There was a second document, a right of survivorship clause that stated upon my death, the remaining share would pass not to my daughter Sage, but to my parents. They were trying to disinherit my child. They were trying to steal my house from under my feet, and they were going to do it while eating hamburgers I paid for. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. This was not drama anymore. This was a felony. This was conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. I looked at the contact information on the request form. The phone number listed for Ruth Gross was Brinley's burner cell number. The email was a Gmail account I didn't own. ruthgrossrealestate@gmail.com. She had impersonated me. She had created a fake email address in my name to set this up, presumably so the confirmation wouldn't go to my actual inbox. But she had slipped up. She must have auto-filled my actual work email in the CC field by mistake. Or perhaps the notary service found my official contact info on the public record and copied me as a courtesy. That one clerical error was the only reason I knew. I grabbed my phone. I didn't call Brinley. I didn't call my parents. I dialed the number for David Sterling, my estate lawyer. It was 8:30 on a Friday night, but I paid a retainer for a reason. "Ruth?" David answered on the second ring. "Is everything all right? I saw some interesting posts from your sister." "David, stop looking at Facebook and check your email," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "I just forwarded you a document. They tried to initiate a title transfer. They scheduled a notary to come to my house tomorrow." I heard the clicking of a keyboard on his end. Silence stretched for 10 seconds. "Jesus," David breathed. "Ruth, this is a draft for a quitclaim deed. Did you authorize this?" "Absolutely not," I said. "Brinley set it up. She impersonated me. She used a fake email." "This is fraud," David said, his tone shifting from casual to lethal. "This is identity theft, and if they intended to coerce you into signing this during a family gathering, that is duress. Ruth, this changes everything. We are not just talking about a restraining order anymore. We are talking about criminal charges." "Do it," I said. "I want to bury them." "I am going to draft an emergency injunction," David said. "And I am going to contact this notary service immediately to flag the appointment as fraudulent. Do not delete that email. Do not delete anything." "I won't." I hung up. I felt nauseous. The level of calculation was sickening. They had planned this for weeks. The reunion was a Trojan horse. I needed to know who else knew. There was no way Brinley did this alone. My parents were involved. Obviously. Their names were on the deed. But 47 people? Surely someone had heard a whisper. I thought of Caleb. My younger brother, Caleb, he was 26, the baby of the family. He was soft-spoken, generally avoided conflict, and usually just went along with whatever Brinley said to keep the peace. He was in one of those cars today. I had seen his Honda Civic in the line. I texted him. "Caleb, I know about the notary. I know about the deed." 3 minutes passed, the longest 3 minutes of my life. Then, 3 dots appeared. "Ruth, I told them it was a bad idea." The message read, My heart shattered. He knew. I dialed his number. He picked up immediately, sounding terrified. "Ruth, I swear, I didn't want to go along with it," Caleb stammered. "Brinley said, she said you were unstable. She said you were making bad financial decisions and that Dad needed to be on the deed to protect the asset for the family. She said it was for your own good." "For my own good?" I whispered. "They were going to cut Sage out. Caleb, I saw the survivorship clause. If I died, the house would go to Mom and Dad, not my daughter. Did you know that?" Silence. Heavy, guilty silence. I didn't read the whole thing," he said weakly. "Brinley just said we needed to secure the beach house so it stays in the family. She said since Sage isn't, since she's adopted, if something happened to you, the state might take the house or give it to Sage's biological relatives or something. She made it sound like they were protecting you." "And you believed that?" I asked. "You believed that Brinley, who has never saved $1 in her life, was trying to protect my assets?" "I am sorry, Ruth," he said, his voice cracking. I am scared of her. You know how she gets. I just wanted to have a nice weekend." "A nice weekend," I repeated. "You were willing to let them rob me and disinherit your niece so you could have a nice weekend." "Ruth, please." "Don't," I said. "You were an accomplice. Caleb, silence is compliance. You are just as bad as they are." I ended the call. I sat alone in the dark office. The screen of my laptop glowed with the evidence of their betrayal. The social media posts were just a distraction. They were smoke bombs thrown to confuse the battlefield while they tried to loot the vault. Brinley didn't care if people thought I was crazy. In fact, she needed people to think I was crazy. If I was mentally unstable, it would be easier to justify why my father needed to take control of my property. It would be easier to challenge my will. It would be easier to take custody of Sage. The horror of it washed over me. This wasn't just about a house. This was an attempt to dismantle my entire legal existence as an autonomous adult. I opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it The Conspiracy. I dragged the notary email into it. I dragged the screenshot of Brinley's fake Gmail account into it. I took a screenshot of Caleb's text admission and dragged that into it. I downloaded Brinley's Facebook post about my breakdown and added it to the pile. Every lie they told, every document they forged, every text message they sent was now ammunition. I wiped the tears from my face. They wanted a fight? They wanted to bring the law into this? I looked at the clock. It was 9:15. I opened my printer tray and loaded a full ream of paper. I had work to do. By Monday morning, I was going to have a dossier so thick it would bury them. I was not just the homeowner anymore. I was the plaintiff, and I was going for the throat. I sat in the glow of my monitor, the adrenaline from the notary discovery slowly curdling into a cold, hard knot of suspicion. The how was clear: impersonation, forgery, and emotional manipulation. But the why still nagged at me. Why now? Why this specific weekend? Why the rush to get a mobile notary on a Saturday afternoon during a holiday? My family was greedy. Yes, they were entitled, absolutely. But they were also lazy. Orchestrating a property theft required effort. It required coordination. Usually, Brinley would just ask for money and guilt-trip me until I wrote a check. Going to the trouble of drafting a quitclaim deed and staging a notary visit suggested a level of desperation I had not seen before. Desperation usually smells like debt. I opened a new browser tab and navigated to the County Clerk of Court's website. Florida has broad public record laws. If you have been sued, evicted, or divorced, it is all there in black and white for anyone with an internet connection to see. I typed Thomas, Brinley into the search bar. The screen refreshed, and the list that populated was so long I had to scroll. There were 3 speeding tickets from last year, a dispute with a landlord from 2 years ago, but the most recent entry, dated just 3 weeks prior, made my breath catch in my throat. Final judgment. Default. Plaintiff, Suncoast Credit Union. Defendant, Brinley Thomas. Amount, $42,580. I clicked on the docket. It was a defaulted car loan for that Range Rover she drove. She hadn't made a payment in 6 months. The repo order was already out. I kept searching. There was another judgment from a credit card company entered in May, $19,000. And another pending lawsuit from a private lender for a small business loan that Brinley had apparently defaulted on. That one was for $35,000. I did the mental math, whispering the numbers out loud. 42,000, 19,000, 35,000. My sister was nearly $100,000 in the hole, and judgments were hitting her from every side. She wasn't just broke, she was insolvent. She was drowning, and the sharks were circling. Then I looked at the dates again. The repo order for the car was active. They could take it any day. The private lender was threatening wage garnishment. Not that she had regular wages to garnish. Suddenly, the timeline made perfect sense. Brinley didn't just want a party. She needed a bailout. But she knew I wouldn't give her $100,000. I had stopped giving her cash years ago. So she came up with a better plan. The beach house. My house is worth nearly $900,000. I have significant equity in it. If she could get my parents' names on the deed, using that fraudulent quitclaim, they would legally own half the property. Once they were owners, even if I refused to sign anything else, they could theoretically force a partition sale. Or more likely, they could use their ownership stake to secure a high-interest hard money loan from some predatory lender who didn't ask too many questions about why the third owner wasn't present. They were going to leverage my home to pay off her debts. They were going to turn my sanctuary into collateral for Brinley's mistakes. I felt a wave of nausea, followed by a surge of pure, white-hot fury. My parents knew. They had to know. You don't agree to be put on a deed and sign survivorship papers unless you know the game plan. They were willing to risk my financial future, my daughter's home, just to save Brinley from the consequences of her own lifestyle. I was the sacrificial lamb, again. I grabbed my phone. I didn't care that it was almost midnight. I logged into every single one of my credit bureau accounts. Equifax, TransUnion, Experian. Freeze credit report. Click. Confirm. I went to the county property appraiser's site and signed up for their fraud alert service, which would email me instantly if any document was recorded against my deed. Then, I opened my email client again. I drafted a message. I didn't send it to Brinley. I sent it to everyone. I added my parents. I added Brinley. I added Caleb. I even added the aunts and uncles who were likely sitting in that motel room right now, listening to Brinley's lies. Subject: Notice of fraud and pending criminal investigation. I typed furiously, the keys clacking like gunfire in the quiet house. To whom it may concern. I am aware of the attempt to notarize a fraudulent quitclaim deed transferring ownership of my property at 4402 Ocean Drive. I have the emails from the notary service. I have the IP addresses used to access the accounts. I have the text messages from Caleb confirming the conspiracy to disinherit my daughter. I have also just downloaded the public court records regarding Brinley's $96,000 in outstanding judgments. I know why you are here. I know you intended to use my equity to cover these debts. Let me be clear. This stops now. My attorney has been notified. The local police have been notified of the identity theft. If any of you attempt to step foot on my property, attempt to contact me, or attempt to file any document with the county clerk, I will press charges for real estate fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Go home. It is over. I hit send. It felt like dropping a bomb and shutting the blast door. I waited. It took less than 2 minutes. My phone lit up. It wasn't a call this time. It was a text from my mother. Ruthie, please, we need to talk. It is not what you think. Brinley is in trouble. She could go to jail if she does not pay the lender. We just wanted to borrow against the house temporarily. We would have paid it back. We are family. You cannot let your sister go under. I stared at the words. You cannot let your sister go under. They admitted it, in writing. They just handed me the confession. They didn't care that they were stealing. They justified it because Brinley was in trouble. In their warped moral universe, my success was a resource that belonged to the collective. And my refusal to share it made me the villain. They were willing to defraud me because they felt entitled to my stability. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot of the text and added it to the conspiracy folder. Another text came in, this time from my father. You are ungrateful. We raised you better than this. To threaten your own flesh and blood with police? For money? You have plenty. You could help her and you choose not to. You are cold. Ruth. Cold. Yes, I was cold. I was the ice that kept the structure standing while they tried to set fire to the foundation. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb mode and placed it face down. I walked out of the office and into the living room. The house was dark, illuminated only by the moonlight spilling in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I looked at the furniture I had picked out. I looked at the walls I had painted. Every inch of this place was me. It was the physical manifestation of my hard work, my discipline, my refusal to be the chaotic mess they were. And they wanted to take it. They wanted to liquidate it to pay for Brinley's Range Rover and her credit card bills. I heard a soft creak on the stairs. I turned around. Sage was standing there in her oversized t-shirt, clutching her stuffed octopus. She looked sleepy and small, her hair mussed on one side. "Mom?" she whispered. I moved quickly to her, my anger evaporating instantly, replaced by a fierce, protective warmth. "Hey, sweetie," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "Did I wake you? I am sorry. I was working." She rubbed her eyes and looked at me with that heartbreakingly perceptible gaze of hers. She saw too much. She always did. "I heard you typing," she said. "And I heard the phone buzzing a lot. Is it the family?" I hesitated. I didn't want to lie to her, but I didn't want to burden her with the ugly, criminal reality of what her grandmother and aunt were trying to do. "Yes," I said. "It was them." Sage looked down at her octopus, squeezing one of its tentacles. "Are they mad because of me?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Because of you?" I asked, kneeling down so I was eye level with her. "Why would you think that?" "Because Aunt Brinley said I am hard to be around," she said softly. "And because you are fighting with them, I thought maybe, if I wasn't here, they would be nice to you. Maybe I caused the trouble." I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. Hot and sudden. This was the damage they did. This was the poison they dripped into her life, drop by drop, until she believed that her existence was an inconvenience to the people who were supposed to love her. I took her hands in mine. They were small and warm. "Sage, look at me," I said firmly. She looked up. "You are not the trouble," I told her, putting every ounce of conviction I possessed into the words. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You are the reason I bought this house. You are the reason I work hard. You are the reason I'm strong enough to say no to them." "Really?" she asked, her voice wavering. "Really," I said. "They are not mad because of you. They are mad because I stopped letting them be mean. They are mad because I am protecting us, and I will always protect us. You are my family. Sage, you and me. That is the team, and nobody, not Brinley, not Grandma, not anybody, is going to break up this team, okay?" She searched my face for a long moment, looking for any sign of deception. She found none, because there was none. "Okay," she whispered. She leaned forward and hugged me, burying her face in my neck. I held her tight, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing. Over her shoulder, I looked out at the dark ocean. My mother had called me cold. Brinley had called me selfish. But holding my daughter, I realized they were wrong. I wasn't cold. I was simply finished being fuel for their fire. "Come on," I said, standing up and lifting her effortlessly, even though she was getting too big to be carried. "Let's get you back to bed. We have a big day tomorrow." "What are we doing tomorrow?" she mumbled into my shoulder. "Tomorrow," I said, "we are going to enjoy our house, and we are going to do it in absolute peace." I carried her up the stairs, leaving the phone, the emails, and the debts down in the darkness. They were panicking now. I could feel it. They were in a motel room 5 miles away, realizing that the ATM was closed, the collateral was locked down, and their secret was out. For the first time in my life, their panic did not trigger my guilt. It triggered my resolve. Let them scramble. I had a daughter to tuck in. Saturday morning broke with a deceptively peaceful sunrise. The sky was a bruised purple that faded into a brilliant, hard blue, the kind of Florida morning that promises heat and clarity. Inside the house, the silence was absolute, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant rhythm of the tide. I was awake at 5 o'clock. I had not slept much, but I did not feel tired. I felt sharpened, like a blade that had been ground down to its finest edge. I sat at my kitchen island, my command center, watching the security feeds. The gate remained closed. The street was empty, but I knew they were out there, hovering in the local motels like vultures waiting for the carcass to soften in the sun. At 7:30, my phone buzzed. I expected another barrage of hate from Brinley or a guilt trip manifesto from my mother. Instead, the name on the screen was Aunt Lydia. Lydia was my father's younger sister, the black sheep of the family, because she had divorced a wealthy man and moved to a small cabin in North Carolina to paint pottery. She was the only one who had never asked me for money. I picked up. "Hello, Lydia." "Ruth," her voice was raspy, likely from a morning cigarette. "I am currently sitting in the lobby of the Comfort Inn, watching your sister scream at a poor receptionist because the continental breakfast ran out of waffle batter. It is quite a show." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "You are with them?" "I drove down separately," Lydia said. "I have my own car. Thank God. Ruth, listen to me. I am not calling to ask you to open the gate. I am calling because you need to know what the narrative is over here." "Let me guess," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "I am crazy? I am having a breakdown?" "Worse," Lydia said, her voice dropping lower. "Brinley is telling everyone that she is already a partial owner of the beach house. She is telling the cousins that the paperwork was finalized last week and that you are illegally locking her out of her own property. She is rallying the troops to go back to the house today to reclaim what belongs to the family. She is using the word squatter to describe you." "She is claiming she already owns it?" I asked, my grip tightening on the mug. "She is waving around a folder," Lydia confirmed. "She says the deed is in there. People are believing her. Ruth, they think you are stealing the house from her." I felt a cold smile touch my lips. It was the smile of a hunter who just watched the prey step directly into the snare. "Thank you, Lydia," I said. "That is exactly what I needed to know." "Watch your back, kid," Lydia said. "They are desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. I am heading home. I have seen enough crazy for 1 decade. She hung up. Brinley was claiming ownership. She was publicly stating that the transfer was complete. That was the leverage I needed. If I could get her to put that in writing, to claim legal ownership to me directly, I would have proof of intent to defraud that no lawyer could argue away. I opened my messaging app. I needed to bait the trap. I needed to sound just vulnerable enough to make her think I was wavering, but specific enough to make her incriminate herself. I typed, "Brinley, the security company is asking for a list of owners to update the access log. They said if there are other owners on the deed, they can legally grant access. Do you have the documentation you mentioned to the family? If you are an owner, I cannot stop you." It was a lie. Of course, the security company worked for me, but Brinley didn't know that. Brinley thought the world worked on bullying and loopholes. I hit send. I watched the 3 dots appear almost instantly. She had been waiting for me to crack. She thought this was my surrender. Finally, her reply came. "Yes, obviously. Mom and Dad signed the quitclaim yesterday. We are all owners now. Ruth, I am a co-owner by proxy through the trust. You cannot keep us out. I have the papers right here. Tell the guard to let us in or I call the sheriff to remove you." I took a screenshot. We are all owners now. She had just admitted to a transaction that never happened. She claimed a signature I never gave. She claimed a legal status she did not possess. But I wasn't done. I needed to seal the exits. I needed to prove that this wasn't just a delusion, but a calculated campaign of identity theft. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for the property management company that oversaw our subdivision. It was Saturday, but the emergency line forwarded to the on-call manager, a man named Jim, whom I had known for years. "Jim, it is Ruth Gross," I said. "Ruth," Jim sounded relieved. "I was about to call you. We have had a situation. A woman has been calling the office main line every hour since 6 this morning. She claims to be you." "She claims to be me?" I repeated, signaling for my desktop recording software to start capturing the call. "Yes," Jim said. "She has your date of birth, your social security last 4 digits, and she is demanding we reset the gate code. She was screaming that she lost her phone and needed immediate access. But the voice, it didn't sound like you. Ruth, and she called from a number with a local area code, not your cell." "Did you record the calls, Jim?" I asked. "All calls are recorded for quality assurance." Jim recited the standard line, then dropped the corporate tone. "Yeah, I have them. It is nasty stuff. Ruth, she threatened to have me fired. She said, and I quote, 'I own this damn subdivision.' Jim, I need you to email me those audio files right now." I said, "That was not me. That was my sister, Brinley. She is attempting to gain unauthorized access to my home. I am building a police file." "Consider it done," Jim said. "I am flagging her number as a security threat. She is not getting in. Ruth, not on my watch." 5 minutes later, the email arrived. I played the first file. "This is Ruth Gross," Brinley's voice said. She was trying to deepen her pitch, trying to sound authoritative, but the frantic, manic edge was unmistakable. "I need the master override code. Now, my daughter is sick inside the house and I'm locked out." I stopped the playback. My daughter. She had used Sage as a prop in her lie. She had impersonated me. The mother she claimed was unfit, and used the existence of the child she wanted to banish as a tool to break into my house. The rage that flared in my chest was white and hot, but I pushed it down into the cold, hard place where I kept my strategy. I had her. I had the text message claiming fake ownership. I had the audio recording of her impersonating me to the management company. I had the email from the notary she tried to hire using my name. I had the credit card fraud records. It was a perfect circle of evidence. There was no misunderstandings, there was no family dispute. There was only a systematic, documented attempt to steal my identity and my property. I organized the files into the digital folder. I backed it up to 3 different cloud servers. I printed hard copies of everything. I was ready. They were coming back. I knew it. Brinley had promised the family a victory. She had promised them a beach house. She couldn't return to her life of debt and failure without one last attempt to crash the gates. I heard the soft padding of bare feet on the hardwood floor. Sage walked into the office. She was holding a large sheet of drawing paper and her box of markers. She looked different today, taller, somehow, less like a frightened bird and more like a child who knew she was safe. "I made something," she said. She held up the paper. It was a drawing of the beach house. She had captured the details perfectly: the wraparound deck, the blue siding, the sea oats in the dunes. But it was the figures on the deck that made my throat tighten. There were only 2 people in the picture. One was a tall woman with dark hair, me. The other was a smaller girl with noise-canceling headphones around her neck, Sage. There were no other stick figures, no crowds, no chaos, no angry faces. Above the house, in big colorful block letters, she had written, "Our Fortress." "It is beautiful. Sage," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It is just us," she said simply. "Nobody else fits." "You are right," I said. "Nobody else fits." I took the drawing from her. "Can I hang this up?" "Where?" "By the front door," I said. "So it is the first thing anyone sees if they try to come in, so they know exactly who lives here." We walked to the entryway together. I found a roll of tape. I smoothed the drawing onto the wall right next to the smart lock panel, the very panel Brinley was so desperate to hack. Our Fortress. It was a declaration. It was a flag planted in the soil. "Are they coming back?" Sage asked. looking at the heavy wooden door. Yes, I said honestly. They will try one more time. Are you scared? I looked at my daughter. I looked at the drawing. I looked at the stack of evidence files sitting on the entry table where I had placed them, ready for the arrival of the police. No, I said. I am not scared. I am prepared. I checked the time. It was 11 o'clock. Checkout time at the motels. Go put on your swimsuit, Sage, I said. We have a pool to enjoy. I will handle the rest. She smiled and ran off toward her room. I stood by the door for a moment, listening. In the distance, down the long driveway, I could hear the faint sound of engines. They were coming. Brinley, my parents, the confused cousins. They were coming for the confrontation Brinley believed she could win by screaming the loudest. She didn't know that I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to argue. I was simply going to press play on the evidence and watch her world disintegrate. I unlocked the deadbolt, not to let them in, but to step out onto the porch. I wanted to meet them standing tall. I wanted them to see me not as the sister who stocked the fridge, but as the woman who owned the lock. The final act was about to begin. The moment I saw the red recording lights of a dozen smartphones pointed at my front gate, I knew that stepping onto the porch had been a mistake. I retreated immediately, locking the heavy oak door behind me and engaging the deadbolt. They did not want a conversation. They wanted content. They wanted a video of Crazy Ruth screaming at her crying mother to post on TikTok or Facebook, a viral clip that would justify their victimhood and crowdfund their legal bills. I would not give them the footage. I would give them the law. I returned to my command center at the kitchen island. The monitors showed the scene in high definition. It was a spectacle. Brinley was standing front and center, holding up a manila folder like a preacher holding a Bible. My parents stood behind her, looking less like aggrieved homeowners and more like frightened accomplices who had lost control of the getaway car. Behind them, the cousins and aunts were murmuring, phone cameras raised, waiting for the explosion. I did not speak to them. I did not turn on the intercom to beg them to leave. Instead, I dialed David Sterling, my attorney. "They are here," I said when he answered, "and they are filming." "I am already on the line with the local precinct," David said, his voice calm and sharp. "Dispatch has a unit 2 minutes out. Do not engage. Ruth, do not go outside. If they want to play this out in the court of public opinion, we will let them, but we are going to finish it in a court of law. Put me on the gate speaker." I pressed the button on my console that connected my phone line to the external intercom system at the gate. "You are live," I said. Outside, Brinley was mid-sentence, performing for her audience. "My sister has stolen this house from our parents. She is keeping an elderly couple from their own property. We have the papers right here." David's voice boomed from the speakers, cutting through the humid air like a gavel strike. "This is David Sterling, legal counsel for Ms. Ruth Gross. You are currently trespassing on private property. You have been denied entry by the sole owner. I am advising you to vacate the premises immediately." The effect was instantaneous. The cousins lowered their phones. My father looked up, startled by the disembodied voice of authority. But Brinley did not back down. She marched up to the camera, shoving the manila folder toward the lens. "Sole owner?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You are a liar. We are co-owners. I have the quitclaim deed right here. It is signed. It is notarized. We own 50% of this house." "That document is a forgery," David said, his tone bored, which I knew would infuriate her more than anger. "Ms. Gross never signed a quitclaim deed. Any signature on that paper is fraudulent." "It is not fraudulent," Brinley screamed, losing her composure entirely. "It is necessary. She is mentally unstable. We had to do it to protect the asset. I have the power of attorney." "You do not have power of attorney," David corrected her, "and by admitting you had to do it, are you stating that you signed Ms. Gross's name without her consent?" The trap snapped shut. In the silence that followed, you could hear the wind rustling the palm fronds. Brinley realized, too late, that she wasn't arguing with a sister she could bully. She was arguing with a lawyer who was recording everything. I signed it as her proxy, Brinley yelled, doubling down on the lie because she had no other place to go. Mom and Dad witnessed it. We have the right. She is incompetent. You just admitted to felony forgery and identity theft on a recorded line, David said. Thank you, Ms. Thomas. You can't. And, David continued, the police are pulling up behind you right now. On the monitor, I saw the flashing blue lights reflect off the chrome of Brinley's Range Rover. 2 squad cars rolled to a stop, blocking the exit of the family convoy. The dynamic shifted instantly. The aggression evaporated, replaced by the frantic, palpable fear of people who have never faced consequences. My father took a step back, trying to distance himself from Brinley. My mother started wringing her hands, looking toward the gate as if hoping I would burst out and save them from the reality they had created. I watched 2 officers step out of the lead cruiser. One of them was a sergeant. I recognized him from the town council meetings. He adjusted his belt and walked toward Brinley, who was now frantically trying to stuff the folder back into her tote bag. Ma'am, we have received multiple calls about a disturbance, the sergeant said, and the homeowner has requested you be removed for trespassing. We live here, Brinley cried, pointing at the house. I am an owner. Ask him. She pointed at my father. The sergeant looked at Vernon Gross, my father, the man who had always demanded respect, the man who had shouted at me on the phone just yesterday, crumbled. He looked at the police officer, then at Brinley, and then at the ground. Dad, Brinley hissed. Tell him. It is Ruth's house, my father mumbled. He couldn't do it. Facing a uniformed officer, the lie was too heavy to carry. We wanted to visit. Liar, Brinley screamed at her own father. You signed the papers. You said we were taking it. Okay, folks, that is enough, the sergeant said, his voice hardening. Ma'am, I need to see some identification, and I need to see those papers you were waving around. They are private, Brinley snapped, clutching her bag. If you are using them to claim residency and access to a property where you are currently trespassing, they are evidence, the sergeant said. He held out his hand. Hand them over. Now. I watched Brinley hesitate. She looked at the house. She looked at the camera lens, which I knew she couldn't see through, but she knew I was there. She knew I was watching. Ruth! She screamed at the closed house. Ruth, stop this. Tell them. This is your family. You are going to let them arrest me? I pressed the talk button on the intercom one last time. I am letting them do their job. Brinley, I said, just like I did mine. She let out a sound of pure, frustrated rage, but she handed the folder to the officer. The sergeant opened it. He scanned the document. He looked at the date, tomorrow's date. He looked at the signature, which was clearly not mine to anyone who knew my handwriting, and likely looked fresh. He looked at Brinley. This is not a filed deed, the sergeant said. This is a draft, and the date is in the future, ma'am. You are trying to enforce a contract that hasn't even happened yet, on a property you don't own. It is a formality, Brinley insisted, but the fight was draining out of her. It is fraud, the sergeant said, and we have a report from the homeowner regarding credit card theft as well. Ms. Thomas, I am going to need you to step away from the vehicle and put your hands where I can see them. The gasps from the family members behind her were audible even through the microphone. My mother let out a wail. No, not Brinley. She didn't mean it. Step back, ma'am, the second officer warned my mother. I watched as Brinley, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one who had mocked my daughter and spent my money, was turned around and handcuffed against the side of her unpaid Range Rover. It wasn't a triumph. It wasn't a moment of fist-pumping joy. It was a tragedy. It was the sad, inevitable collapse of a structure built on rot. I didn't feel happy. I felt a deep, exhausting relief that the gaslighting was finally over. The truth was no longer my opinion. It was a police report. The rest of the family, the cousins, the aunts, were scrambling now. They were getting into their cars. desperate to leave before they were associated with the arrest. The mob had dispersed. The reunion was dissolving into a crime scene. I felt a small hand slip into mine. I turned. Sage was standing beside me, looking up at the monitor. She was wearing her swimsuit and her goggles were perched on her forehead, but she wasn't looking at the pool. She was watching the screen where her aunt was being placed into the back of a police cruiser. "Is she going to jail?" Sage asked. Her voice was quiet, devoid of fear, just curious.
Yes, I said. For a little while.
Because she was bad? Because she broke the rules, I corrected gently, and because she tried to take things that didn't belong to her. Sage looked at the screen, then at me. She wanted our house. Yes, but she couldn't take it. No, I said. She couldn't. Sage nodded, satisfied with the logic. She pointed to the screen, where the cars were reversing out of the driveway, fleeing the scene. They are all leaving.
They are, I said.
So it is just us? Just us, I confirmed. She looked at the drawing taped by the door, then back at the chaotic scene on the screen. I like it better this way. Me too, baby, I said. Me too. Outside, the police cruiser's lights flashed, illuminating the palm trees in staccato bursts of red and blue. My parents were standing by their car, looking lost, looking old. They weren't looking at the house anymore. They were realizing that the ATM was broken, the bridge was burned, and they were on the wrong side of the water. I turned off the monitor. I didn't need to see the rest. The lawyers would handle the arraignment. The insurance would handle the credit cards. I picked up the phone and texted David. Thank you. Proceed with the restraining orders.
Then I put the phone down.
Sage, I said, I think the pool heater is finally up to temperature. She grinned, the first real unburdened smile I had seen in days. Cannonball?
Cannonball, I agreed.
We walked out the back door, toward the ocean, leaving the front door, and the family, firmly locked behind us. The weeks that followed the arrest were not defined by noise, but by the quiet, terrifying precision of the legal system. I did not have to scream at Brinley again. I did not have to argue with my parents about their entitlement. I simply sat in the plush leather chair of David Sterling's conference room and watched him lay out the architecture of their defeat. The centerpiece of the table was the conspiracy folder I had compiled. It was 3 inches thick. David had filed for a permanent civil restraining order against Brinley, citing identity theft, credit card fraud, and harassment. He also filed a motion for a stay-away order against my parents regarding the property itself. My parents were present at the deposition, sitting on the opposite side of the mahogany table. They looked smaller than I had ever seen them. My father, stripped of his bravado by the humiliation of the police encounter, refused to make eye contact. My mother looked weepily at the evidence spread out before her. The text messages where she agreed to the fraud, the credit card statements showing the party supplies she helped buy with stolen money. "This is a misunderstanding," my mother tried to whisper, but her voice lacked conviction. "It is a felony," David corrected her, his voice devoid of sympathy. "We have the audio of Brinley impersonating Ruth. We have the metadata from the fake email account. We have the notary's sworn statement that he was hired by an imposter. We are prepared to take this to trial. However, Ms. Gross is willing to offer a settlement." My father looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. He probably thought I was going to pay Brinley's bail or drop the charges. "The settlement is simple," I said, speaking for the first time. "You will sign a document acknowledging that you have no claim, present or future, to the property at 4402 Ocean Drive. You will agree to a permanent injunction barring you from entering the subdivision, and you will repay every single cent charged to my American Express card, plus legal fees." "We do not have that kind of money," my father grunted. "Then you can sell your boat," I said calmly. "Or you can ask Brinley to pay you back from the money she doesn't have." "Ruth," my mother pleaded, "she is your sister. She is facing jail time." "She is facing the consequences of her actions," I replied, "and so are you." Then came the final blow. I slid a document across the table. It was not a settlement offer. It was a notification of a deed transfer.
Effective this morning, I told them. I have placed the beach house into an irrevocable trust. My father frowned, picking up the paper. What does that mean?
It means I no longer own the house in my own name, I explained. The trust owns it, and the sole beneficiary of the trust is Sage Gross. If I die tomorrow, the house does not go to my next of kin. It does not go to you. It goes directly to Sage, managed by a third-party executor until she is 25. I watched the realization wash over them. This was the checkmate. They had hoped that even if I was angry now, eventually I might die or reconcile, and the asset would revert to the Blood family. I had just legally severed that possibility forever.
You gave the house to the girl? My father asked, his voice thick with disbelief.
I gave the house to my daughter, I corrected him, my voice steel. I have ensured that no matter what schemes you cook up, no matter what forged papers you try to pass, you will never, ever touch this property. It belongs to Sage. It has always belonged to Sage. My father dropped the paper. He looked defeated. The silence in the room was the sound of a dynasty of entitlement crumbling to dust. They signed the settlement. They had no choice. Brinley did not get off so lightly. The credit card fraud charges stuck. The identity theft charges stuck. She eventually pled down to a misdemeanor to avoid prison time, but the felony record for fraud meant she lost her real estate license, which she had barely been using anyway, and her reputation in town was incinerated. The social media fallout was swift and brutal. When the police report became public record, the narrative shifted overnight. The people who had commented on her Facebook post, calling me unstable and cruel, suddenly went very quiet. Several of them deleted their comments. A few, including the cousin who had called me paranoid, sent me awkward apology texts. Hey Ruth, just heard the full story. Wow, had no idea Brinley was in that deep. Hope you are okay. I didn't reply. I didn't need their apologies. I needed them to stay away, and my silence was the most effective border wall I could build. Brinley's friends, the ones she had invited to the party, turned on her the moment they realized there was no free vacation. The swarm of 47 people dissolved into zero. It turned out they were not there for her. They were there for the amenities. Without the beach house, Brinley was just a woman with a lot of debt and a bad attitude. The house itself seemed to breathe easier once the legal battles were over. The negative energy that had clung to the property, the phantom weight of my family's expectations, was gone. 2 weeks after the 4th of July weekend that never happened, I finally held a reunion. But it wasn't a spectacle. There were no caterers. There were no rented speakers or kegs of beer. It was just 3 cars in the driveway. Aunt Lydia came down from North Carolina, bringing a box of her handmade ceramic mugs and a calm, smoky demeanor that fit perfectly with the ocean air. My best friend from college, Sarah, flew in with her husband and their quiet, bookish son who was the same age as Sage. And, of course, there was Sage and me. We did not stock the fridge with hundreds of dollars of alcohol. We bought fresh fruit, good cheese, and ingredients to make tacos. The atmosphere was unrecognizable compared to the chaos of previous family gatherings. There was no screaming, there was no performative laughter, there was no walking on eggshells. I sat on the deck with Lydia, watching the kids play on the beach. Sage was showing Sarah's son how to find shark teeth in the surf. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't wearing her headphones. She was laughing, pointing at the sand, completely in her element. She looks happy, Lydia said, lighting a cigarette and blowing the smoke downwind, away from the house. She is happy, I said. She knows she is safe here now. You did a good thing, Ruth, Lydia said, tapping ash into a shell. It takes a lot of guts to amputate a limb, even when it is gangrenous. Your parents, they are never going to understand. They are going to play the victim until the day they die. I know, I said. I have made peace with that. I do not need them to understand. I just need them to leave us alone. Well, Lydia smiled, looking at the Our Fortress drawing that was still taped by the front door. I think you made your point loud and clear.
That trust structure? That was genius. Vicious, but genius. It was necessary, I said.
Later that evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of tangerine and violet, we all gathered around the fire pit. There were only 6 of us. Sage sat next to me, roasting a marshmallow. She was meticulous about it, rotating the stick slowly to get an even golden brown. In the past, her cousins would have shoved her, or burned their marshmallows and thrown them at her, or made fun of her concentration. Here, in this new circle, everyone watched her with patience. "That is a perfect technique, Sage," Sarah's husband said genuinely. "You have to teach me. Mine always catch on fire." Sage beamed. It was a small moment, insignificant to anyone else, but to me, it was everything. She was being seen. She was being respected. I looked around the circle. I looked at Lydia, the outcast who had found her own peace. I looked at Sarah, the friend who had stood by me through the divorce and the adoption. I looked at my daughter, the light of my life. This was the reunion I had been craving for years. I just hadn't realized that to have it, I had to uninvite the people who shared my last name. I realized then that the family reunion Brinley had planned was never about family. It was about consumption. It was about taking this quiet fire, this shared food, this safety. This was family. Sage leaned her head on my shoulder. "Mom?"
Yeah, baby?
"This is the best party ever," she whispered. I kissed the top of her head, smelling the salt air and the wood smoke.
Yes, I agreed.
"It is." The house behind us stood tall and strong, its windows reflecting the firelight. It was no longer a target. It was no longer a bargaining chip. It was a home. I had lost parents, a sister, and a brother to keep this peace. I had spent thousands on lawyers. I had endured humiliation and rage. But looking at Sage's smile as she pulled the perfect marshmallow from the fire, I knew I had come out ahead. I was richer now than I had ever been. Ruth understands that family is not those who share blood, but those who never make her child feel like she is surplus. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a long journey for Ruth, but she finally protected what mattered most. I would love to hear where you are tuning in from today. Please comment your location down below so we can see how far our community reaches. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please make sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, hit the like button, and press that hype button to help this story get recommended to more people who need a little victory in their day.